Hello and welcome to FanSided. I'm Jasmine and today we're going to be talking about something that I find extremely important and a little bit personal. We're talking about the NFL and the surrounding and reoccurring issues of domestic violence and sexual assault. With me today I have my lovely co-worker and host of FanSided's Meltdown Tuesday, Matt Verderame. Thank you so much for joining me, Matt, and chatting with me today.
No problem.
Last week in your Meltdown Tuesday, you touched on this topic, specifically with Tyreek Hill being the 5th round pick towards the Kansas City Chiefs. For those of you that might have missed what Matt had to say, we're going to play a little clip. Let's take a look.
They drafted Tyreek Hill in the 5th round of the NFL draft this year, and they're pretty jacked up about it. Why? Because he has world-class speed. So what's the problem with that? He got kicked out of Oklahoma State, had to finish up his college career at Western Alabama. He had to get kicked out because he went out and he punched his pregnant girlfriend and he strangled her, threw her against the wall, and he was pleading guilty to this entire thing. So it's not as though these are accusations. He actually did it. And then the Chiefs get up in a press conference and say, hey, you gotta trust us. I'm not trusting you with anything. I'm trusting the fact that he pleaded guilty to punching a pregnant woman in the stomach.
So some pretty intense feelings surrounding this subject. Now, I know you're a Kansas City Chiefs fan already. You're a big supporter of the team. You have been pretty much your entire life, correct?
Yep.
After seeing them take Tyreek Hill, are you still a fan of the team?
I am still a fan of the team, but I'm not very happy with the team currently. And I know it's so tough because I've been a fan of them since I was 5 years old. And so I've always followed them. They've been a huge part of my life. It's a family thing with my family. And so I am, but I'm not going to lie. If he makes the team and he has the ball in his hands, it's going to be a very conflicting feeling. Because on one side of the coin, yeah, I want him to do well because I want the team to do well.
Right.
But I don't want him to do well because I don't want him to be on my team for any longer than I have to deal with it.
Now, for those that are on the same page of you, because I'm one of them, I don't agree that they should have taken Hill in the 5th round. I don't think he should be playing in the NFL, period. But the Kansas City Chiefs do have a chance to make the playoffs this year. They're one of the best teams in the AFC West. If they do make the playoffs, let's just say, and Tyreek Hill ends up being a core part of their success, does that change people's opinion around Hill, you think, the success on the field?
Oh, I think if he returns a touchdown, a punt return or a kick return for a touchdown in Arrowhead, he'll have 80,000 people going crazy, screaming his name, and kids want to buy his jersey, and people will. For me personally, I will be really happy that they scored a touchdown, but will it take some of the joy away? Sure, because I can't root for that guy. I'm under no illusion that the 53 guys in that team are all choir boys. I know they're not. But none of them, to my knowledge, have been arrested or charged with sexual assault or domestic violence. Most of the guys have never had any kind of a criminal history. I can root a lot easier for a guy like that, even if it was a little bit rough around the edges, maybe got suspended for smoking pot or something. It wasn't hurting anybody.
Right.
If Tyreek Hill scores a touchdown for the Chiefs in a big moment, am I happy? I'm guilty as charged, yes, because I want the Chiefs to win, but I'm not happy he's the one who scored the touchdown, so it's going to be very conflicting.
But is that, in a way, condoning domestic violence and sexual assault? Because in the league, there seems to be a double-edged sword, if you will, that says, I'm against domestic violence. Yep. I'm against sexual assault, but I'm still a fan of the team.
Right.
I mean, is that condoning it? Is that okaying it? Or what do you think about that?
I think that's a really good question. I think, honestly, in a way, I hate to say this, I think it is a little bit in a way. I think you're kind of saying, well, as long as you can produce, as long as you can make my team better, I'm going to kind of turn a blind eye to it if I have to. I hate to say that because I certainly am completely against anybody who would ever strike a woman. I think it's a cowardly act. I think anybody that doesn't belong in prison. That said, as a sports fan, I think sometimes we separate ourselves from it a little bit, right? Because he puts on the helmet and we don't see him doing it. That's why I think the Ray Rice thing was so powerful. Right. He got a 2-game suspension originally, and it was going to go away. The Ravens had no intention of cutting him. And then that video surfaced. And when you actually see it, that's a totally different thing. I guarantee you, if that Tyreek Hill thing was on videotape, that guy doesn't sniff the NFL. There is not a chance in the world.
Why do you think in our society we need that visual confirmation in order to convict somebody or in order to put them sort of in their right place? Why is it we need to see it visually, you think?
I think the human experience is taken in through the eyes. And so I think sometimes if you hear about something, you maybe think of it in your head of what it might look like, but a lot of times you don't assign a sound to it, you don't assign an action to it. I think when you saw the Ray Rice thing, there was no sound, but you saw his fiancée at the time, now wife, John A. Palmer, you saw her just go to the ground, just get leveled. I think it's just like with war. You know, people maybe at 17, 18 years old, like, I'm going to go to war, you know, that Greatest Generation thing, World War II. You watch silent films of it, maybe you see it in black and white footage, but when you actually can hear it, you can hear somebody screaming with their arm blown off, it's different. You have that image in totality. And I think for this, it's the same type of thing. When you can pair the thought with an actual visual on it, it makes it so much harder to ignore.
What do you think the league needs to do a better job of going forward in order to avoid these type of situations? Or have they been doing a good job, in your opinion?
I don't think they've done a good job at all. And my opinion on it is if you are convicted or you plead guilty to a sexual assault, to a domestic violence, you should not be allowed to play in the league. There's nothing saying they can't do that. There's no legality that, hey, look, it's your league. You can hire whoever you want. Let's be real about it. It's a business. People look at it as a game, but you're hiring and firing people in this job every single day. There's no reason the NFL can't say, hey, look, you get charged and convicted of domestic violence, sexual assault, you're gone. It's done. And I think in the NFL right now, if you're a current player and you get charged with it, they can suspend you for 6 games. Why not just take you out of the league? I hate to say it. If you look at statistics, a lot of people who are charged or found guilty of domestic violence, they're repeat offenders. Right. You don't just wake up one day and all of a sudden hit your spouse. Yeah. It doesn't happen. There's a pattern of it. And so I think with Tyreek Hill, the Chiefs should be smart enough to just say, look, we're going to stay away from that. But they weren't smart enough. And sometimes people need to be helped. Look at the Cowboys signing Greg Hardy last year. Right. They signed him because he has talent. If he wasn't talented, if he was a practice squad level player, they don't even go near him. But they looked at it as an opportunity to get better, and they said, the hell with the public relations stuff, it'll go away.
But Greg Hardy didn't have the greatest season that compared to the rest of last year, at least with the Cowboys. And they chose not to take him back. But had he had a better season,
he'd be back.
You think he'd be for sure be back?
And if he wasn't back, some other team would have signed him. It's no coincidence. If he had a bad year, where is he? Yeah. He's on the street, nobody will sign him, nobody will touch him. If he had 15 sacks last year, somebody would have given him a $100 million contract. There's no doubt. They would have taken the risk because they would have said, you know what, the PR will blow over in a few weeks. And I hate to say it, that's what the Chiefs are doing. The Chiefs are saying, we're going to take the slings and arrows for a few weeks. And the Chiefs should know better. A couple of years ago, in 2012, Javon Belcher, their starting linebacker, shot and killed his girlfriend, shot her 9 times, then went into the Arrowhead Stadium parking lot and in front of their coach and GM of the time, Scott Pilley and Romeo Crennel, shot himself in the head, killed himself. If that doesn't scare you away from domestic violence, what can? Yeah. That has to be the most striking example of it in the history of the sport, and the Chiefs still pick this guy.
Now, when I'm talking about mainstream media, oftentimes I see a lot of feelings going around situations like Tom Brady and the Patriots where he cheated the game. Something happened within the rules of the game, which people sort of get really upset about. But then you see Tyreek Hill and these domestic violence situations or sexual assault situations, and it seems to be, well, he deserves a second chance, and well, maybe it's okay. Why is there such a huge distinction between when it comes to the rules of the game being possibly messed with, or when it comes to things like domestic violence or conviction on any case? I think it's wrong, but I think it's because people love their football. And Tom Brady, in a lot of people's eyes, he screwed the game. They deflated the footballs, and that's not fair, and it's taking away a chance from another team, and it's on the playing field. People look at that and they have a visceral reaction to it because they say, hey, you're getting an unfair advantage. And obviously, what's worse, deflating a football or striking? So I don't think anybody with a working brain would say, the football thing is worse. Of course, the domestic violence is worse. But I think people get so wrapped up in these games. You look at Las Vegas, millions and millions and millions of dollars to bet on every single football game. People have livelihoods on these games. That doesn't mean it's okay. It doesn't. And I think the NFL, to its credit, as much as I think it's still handling it poorly, has made strides. 15 years ago,
There was no mandatory suspension. Even a couple of years ago. The Ray Rice thing changed a lot of that. But I still think that you have to catch up, and as a fan, you also have to catch up, and I'm guilty of this, like I said earlier. I will still root for the Chiefs.
Right.
I will still root for him to return the kick 90 yards because I want to see them win. Maybe as a society, we have to get to the point where we say, you know what? We're rooting for a group of strangers in matching laundry. It's not as important, not even close, to what's going on, and we need to come together with this. You know, maybe Tyreek's a good person at a horrendous moment. Maybe that's the case. Maybe he's a bad guy, and he'll never be a better guy. But these people who say he deserves a second chance, that's fine and good. That doesn't mean he deserves it in the NFL.
Yes.
There's nothing saying that they have to put him in the league.
We'll finish up with one last question for you, Matt. How do you think the media can do a better job of handling this? Do you think, as the media right now, have we covered these types of issues well, or do you think these situations are more just the sexy thing to talk about right now?
I think it's a combo. I think it's definitely covered better than it was. You know, if you're talking 10 years ago, I don't think domestic violence was really an issue in sports. Nobody really talked about it. I think now there's certainly, like, Twitter and Facebook can be a bad thing for a lot of reasons, but it can also be a very powerful thing, and I think the message gets out a lot quicker. So I do think we're covering it better. I do think there's more talk about it, and I think the more talk there is, the more conversation you're going to have, the better. That's what I think the answer to it is. A lot of people like yourself get female journalists, get female reporters in there who have that perspective, because I think that makes the conversation grow. It includes more people. And I think, you know, women have a different perspective than men. I think everybody can agree domestic violence is wrong, but typically speaking, domestic violence, the men are the aggressors. The women, unfortunately, have to deal with that. I think if you have the women involved, they talk more about it, you get more viewpoints from females, I think then you start to get a little bit more of that double-sided where, hey, you know, this is our vantage point of this is what's happening, and then maybe you start to educate some people on it.
Well, we'll definitely have to keep track of how the NFL chooses to address the situation throughout this next season. But I do think that it is important to have these types of conversations, whether it's the league or the fans or the media, so that we can all move forward in the right direction and hopefully avoid these problems in the future. Thank you so much for joining me today.
Thank you.
Be sure to keep up with me as I continue to cover Tyreek Hill and the Kansas City Chiefs, as well as the rest of the NFL and how they will handle or not handle when it comes to domestic violence and sexual assault. And of course, stay tuned to Matt Verderame's Meltdown Tuesday this week. I'm Jasmine. Thanks for joining us.